Hi, everyone, and welcome to Noona's Noonchi podcast. I'm so excited to have Anthony Shu, Retail Support Manager, who I got to know through NAAAP, the National Association of Asian American Professionals. It's a long word, but we got to know each other. I want to say in the last, COVID was like a year and a half. So before COVID, we met in person a couple times, and what really got us even close was our love of KDramas.
Mm-hmm.
So Anthony, welcome to Noona's Noonchi. Thanks for being here.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really excited to be here. And it's nice to be able to talk about K-dramas with someone. So
exactly. So I remember it was last year. This is 2020, early on in the pandemic, I want to say. I know you had heard me talk about K-dramas before, but then I remember you Facebook messaged me or texted me, whatever it was, saying, oh, I'm watching, and I won't say the K-drama because I don't know if that's your first one, but how did you get into them? Because you were super excited about the one you shared with me.
Yes. So funny story. How I actually got into K-dramas was, so my cousin, I'll give a shout out to my cousin, Brian. He loves K-dramas. And then his husband actually posted a video of him like crying on Facebook, like after watching a K-drama, pretty funny. And so I was just like, wow, like this must really hit hard. I'm very curious, like what, like
did you saw him sobbing or something?
Yes, like literally like sobbing. And yeah, he'll probably he'd be okay with the call out. He'd probably find it funny too. Yeah, so I was just like curious, like wow, okay, I hear a lot about K-dramas. I've seen it on in the background when family members watching it, but I never actually like sat and like watched one. So you know what, it's just like the beginning of lockdown. I have some extra time. I was very just more curious what it was about, like what caused him to be in such hysterics.
Wow. And so, okay, so that kind of piqued your curiosity.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
let's talk about that. So then you go, okay, my cousin's into them. Let me check it out. Is that how it started? Okay.
Exactly.
So what was your first K-drama?
It was Crash Landing on You. And yeah, loved it. But it was just, and I just kind of like went into it, not really, I was expecting some sort of emotional roller coaster given what I saw, but I just, I was curious. I really hadn't known much about it. I liked the premise of the setting, and it was a very interesting setting, like a unique setting. And so that appealed to me as well. But then, yeah, I decided to just go on in, and just from then I was hooked.
Now, was that the one that your cousin was watching?
Yes.
Aha. Okay. And then here, I'll just say I remember you and I talking about it, and you said you did cry at certain point. Yeah. And so I know we all cried. I feel like we cry at certain things that are similar, but then different too. But the one that you cried out made sense to me. So tell the folks where you got emotional. Was it the same scene your cousin did as well?
No, well, I think from what I gathered, my cousin got emotional a lot, but it was not the same scene. But I know for sure one of the scenes that I like cried over wasn't one that hit him, and I think it and it hit me in a different way. So the first scene I remember crying, it was a spoiler alert, I guess. Anybody out there?
I'm sure everyone's seen it, but yes.
Was when Yoon Se-ri is back in South, she's back in Seoul, and then all the other North Korean soldiers had crossed the border, and then when she is like wondering where Captain Ri is, and then she's like, what? And then like, because he tells her he's with them, and then she drives the car up and like gets out, and she sees all of them. I was like, oh my gosh, that was like that just hit me. It was just like, knowing that she probably left, thinking she'd probably never see them again. And and it just shows
like that affection that she had for them, or the affinity. Yeah, no, I remember that scene. That was a really good scene. So Crash Landing, and then you said, and that was just the beginning. So tell me, okay, so that got you hooked, but I know the obvious of Crash Landing and you getting people hooked, but let's break it down. Why did that get you just started into K-dramas? What was it about it?
What I really appreciate, I've noticed, not just with that K-drama, but like in general, they take you in such an emotional roller coaster, no matter what the like, kind of like the genre, I would say, whether it's like, whether it's supposed to be a comedic one, whether it's supposed to be a more touching, dramatic drama, it still takes you in the roller coaster of emotions where like in one episode, and I know it's like hour and a half episodes, I know it's a lot of time.
Yeah.
But you know, you can, there's laughter, there's funny bits in it, there's touching moments that make you sad, there's moments that make you angry. It takes you through all those emotions, and especially during the pandemic, during this lockdown period time, it's like things were kind of just stagnant, I guess, right, in everyday life, because it's just like, you know, I know it's different for some, but for me, I was, you know, working remotely, so I was just kind of staying home where I wasn't really seeing anybody, so everything was just kind of like steady line above my routines, which, you know, what's but given, you know, my circumstances at the time, but like the K-drama allowed all those range of emotions, which I wasn't really experiencing in everyday life, because it was just, okay, wake up, go over my desk, work, and then, you know, stay home, and then wait until the next day. And,
I love that you explained that, because that means that we need to experience some range of emotions, is what you're kind of hinting at. That's super cool. Awesome. So then, okay, so then let's talk about it, that you're an early rookie. Not even rookie, I shouldn't say rookie, but there's so many rookies, right? From K-drama world, starting in the pandemic, because that's what the pandemic done. Now, can you count how many, or can you kind of give me a ballpark figure of how many you've watched?
Let's see, 6.
6, okay. It's so funny, you're so thoughtful about how many you've watched. No, so give me the, since there's 6, tell me the ones you've watched.
Yeah. So Crash Landing on You, Itaewon Class, Startup, Mr. Sunshine, Vincenzo, then Descendants of the Sun.
Oh, wow. Okay. I thought you were going to see, and this is a side conversation that people don't know about watching this. Weren't you going to see What's Wrong with Secretary Kim?
That is on my list. Yes, that is on my list.
Okay. Because every time I talk to you, like, okay, I'm going to see What's Wrong with Secretary Kim. And then you would watch something else. That's great.
Yep.
Because there's so many to watch. I mean, that's the
exactly
thing.
Yes.
So then,
and then,
okay. Oh, go ahead.
And part of it is also like, if I know someone else is watching it, then I'm like, oh, I'll watch this one with you, so I can be along the journey with them. And everyone I know who are in the K-dramas have seen What's Wrong with Secretary Kim already, so I know that's will be myself, which I do want to do, but
yeah, you can watch that yourself. But you're right, there's so much to see. So then tell me, do you have a favorite?
I would say, I guess it's favorite in different ways. So Startup, I would say, if I were to pick one, Startup is one I put over and over. It's because it's just a feel good one. Like I have it on in the background sometimes if I just want something on in the background. It's not, you know, it's lighthearted.
Lighthearted, and yeah.
And then especially like it like motivates me too, because it's kind of like takes place in like the startup work world. And so I'm like, oh, she's working really hard, so I guess I should be working hard right now too, as she's typing away, and she
becomes CEO eventually.
Right, exactly. Yes. And then it's, like I said, that one is just, it's just a feel good one. And there's, you know, there's drama in it, but it's nothing too intense, too heavy.
Right. Like, okay, but let's put a pause on it now. I love Startup too. What team were you on?
I was Team Namdo-san. I was Team Namdo-san, yes.
It's all right. Let me do some meditation. So I would love to, because, you know, everybody had their favorites.
Yes.
I want to say, of course, it's Team Hanji-pyong, that he was more favored, but no, I know there's a lot of Namdo-san fans. Tell me your reason why you were Team Namdo-san.
Yeah, I think to me, Namdo-san just like, I feel like I saw a lot of like growth within his character throughout the series, and he was kind of like, to me, like the underdog of it, even though like as far as in life circumstance, like he was kind of the underdog there, and I kind of just like that kind of like that coming from beating against the odds and kind of overcoming that. And I know if you look at Hanji-pyong, like throughout his whole life, like he had that story too. But of course, most of the series was like as their later adult lives, where he is already well established. And you know, don't get me wrong, I think they're both great characters. Actually, some of my favorite scenes were the interactions between those two.
Me too. Like, they had a good, thing going on, right?
Yes,
like,
yes.
Not exactly bromance, because it's not they were totally fond of each other, but it was good to see the relationship. Yes.
Yes. Like when they were both staying at the grandmother's house together, like that was just like so like that was just like, and like sleeping in that same cot to like brothers almost like brothers in like a rivalry. It was cute and funny. And,
you're right. So you said some good stuff. So we're still friends. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally no, because of course that drama's the first K-drama I can think of that brought out that rivalry of fans. It's like, are you Hanjipyeong or Namdo-san? I was like, oh my gosh, everyone's so intense. I mean, I don't, because you're new at K-dramas. I've never seen that in a K-drama.
Okay.
Where people were totally like, no, I'm totally this fan. And you're like, what? And then they don't talk. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but that's intense. But Namdo-san, he gave some good reasons. And you're right. He was, I did like his character overall. I did, of course.
Actually, I have a point to bring up on that part you just said. I feel like, do you think it's like about the either Team Namdo-san or Team Hanjipyeong? I feel like, do you think that's kind of like a result of the current times, where a lot of times it's like, for whether it's, unfortunately, whether it's politics or sports, a lot of people tend to be like, we're in one camp or the other. Do you think that's
that was deep, Anthony? That is a good point. Like I've never, what? Great point. I got to point this out to the podcast people. That's amazing, because no one's ever said, is that part of the times? But I don't know anybody who's neutral. You're right. In the team startup world, everyone's either one or the other. And it was like, and maybe there were people who didn't really like both, but they still chose. So that's interesting. Yeah, I think in this day and age, 18 months of COVID, and you're right, politics, people feel like they have to pick a side. But in the real world, there, especially when it comes to like mental health, everything's gray.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't be black and white. You can't be, So good point. That was a deep moment. I had to think about it.
That's what K-dramas can do. They can.
I know. Wow. So thanks for sharing that. And then Mr. Sunshine. Now, so there's a wide range of things you saw. Anything in particular that, I guess, because here's the mental health question, that you watched and shifted your thinking on your mental health, or like made you realize something, or emotionally stuck with you, either good or bad?
Well, I think that's one of the themes throughout all, I feel like in any of the K-dramas, obviously they're very emotionally expressive, right? I mean, you need that to like create a drama. You need to be need to communicate. People need to like express their emotions. I feel like one thing I've learned is that like it's okay to be expressive, and we need that, like human beings. We need that from time to time. Maybe not like 24/7, I don't, it's not like I want my whole life to be a K-drama, but like it'll be fun.
Yeah, it could be fun. Yeah.
But I think one of the things I learned is how do you build those connections with people? Because a lot of what I feel like draws people into K-dramas is the relationships between characters. Like at the end of the day, that's what we want to see, those moments. And I think if like those moments are so important for mental health, and especially like I said, during pandemic, during the lockdown periods, it was like, wow, that human connection is really what drives that forward. And then I'll leave it at that.
No, I thought that was interesting because as Asians, fellow Asians here, you said that I thought it was interesting. You said we need emotional expression. Of course, I agree. But that's so non-Asian if you think about it. We're not generally expressive. But then, or generally speaking, I'm just being very stereotypical. But the fact that K-dramas bring out that emotion in us, like, in your point of view, the fact that you say we need that emotion, share about that a little bit more. Like we're talking Asian perspective, Asian culture. Anything shift in your identity as you're watching K-dramas?
Shift in my identity. Wow. Yeah. Now you're getting deep too.
Yes, I'm getting deep.
Yes. Like it's hard to say. I think like it's hard to say if there's like been like a huge shift in like personal. I mean, it's personal characteristics, but I think there's definitely a lot of things that have influenced me. And I think one thing that K-dramas allow you to do, and I think this is probably why people gravitate towards that, is I think we feel shame about like or like, as an Asian, and it's a generalization, but we're not supposed to feel those emotions for ourselves. but to feel it for others is actually like, I don't want to say like value, but that's different. And so for me to think about this community of K-drama, whatever characters, I think this is just me hypothesizing with no, but like it feels okay to be emotion expressive and to have the emotion come out when it's not related to my own life. And I think K-dramas allow that outlet for that.
That is so well said. It's true. It's true. So that said, and you saying this outlet, because you said it a couple times, oh, it was nice to have like to express emotions and have an outlet. And you watching Startup because it's in the background, because it's like feel good. How have K-dramas overall, and I think I might be repeating myself, but helped your mental health, not just in the pandemic, just in general? Like, what have you noticed?
Yeah. So so this goes back to so this will kind of backtrack to kind of my schooling days. I initially wanted to be a therapist. That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a therapist. I studied psychology. That was what I wanted to do. So one thing that really stuck with me when I learned through like different approaches, the person-centered approach, kind of based on humanistic psychology, I'm sure you're aware of, or at least learned about, that kind of stuck with me when I was learning through that. So a lot of that is the person-centered approach is about like, no matter what context, what setting you're in, it's how are you in touch with your own internal feelings, your processes, your experiences that empowers the individual to uplift themselves. And so the one thing where I see this in K-drama is I find the ability to relate to so many different characters, whether or not their experiences were like mine or not. So, and on the surface. So, like I'll think back to Itaewon Class. I think, and I could go on about Itaewon Class. That was just a really good one with so much social commentary around it.
Oh yeah.
There are people from different socioeconomic statuses. Yeah. And but I could still find ways to relate to every single one, even if I didn't grow up that same way, from the super wealthy, from being an orphan. Like there were bits and pieces that I could relate to no matter the setting. And I think that kind of really goes back to that person-centered approach, that it's person-centered as opposed to the environment. Although the environment, I do think the environment has a lot to impact, but just in taking that approach to therapy, that person-centered approach, that was what resonated to me, because that's what resonated with me when I was, studying and all that. So
that's such a great connection. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, person-centered approach. And so, by the way, why did you not pursue therapy, being a therapist?
Well, honestly, that was my plan. I just started working and just kept working. So that was, yeah. I mean,
someday you never know. I mean, but because you bringing a person-centered approach from a K-drama, you're like a classic example of why I connected to K-dramas, because you start thinking about things like existential things, and I love that you connected that. I agree with that. I really do see that in the K-dramas. And so let's talk about Itaewon Class. You're right. People are watching stuff and you clearly, well, here's the thing, non-Asians, I mean, some of my white friends and Black friends love K-dramas, and they don't relate culturally, but then they do. They relate to the stories of like resilience and tragedy, right? Or trauma. So Itaewon Class, you're right, had a lot of social justice, race. What was the thing that stuck out for you? Where there's so much to break down, but something that really stuck out for you as a learning lesson, or something you're like, oh, I'm so glad that they showed this in a K-drama.
Yeah. So I think the class warfare type of aspect to it, I think that's something that's really important to recognize. I think that's especially because it revolves around money. Like I feel like in society and culture, we don't like to talk about money. This is true. Like this is not specific to like Asian culture or whatever. Like across the board, it's like money is a taboo topic, and so I think that show addressed it so well. Like because then with the and I forgot names throughout that, but like with the the big bad CEO, quote unquote.
Yeah, the Changa guy. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
Where, you know, it's like you realize he has so much power because he has so much resources. And then actually I learned a lot about the chaebol culture because of all that.
Right.
Like the history behind that too, which also like I dug into that because I was just so curious about the chaebol culture. And
We'll
so
talk
that's
about that a little bit for the listeners. Tell us what you've learned in the chaebol culture.
yeah, well, for anyone, it's when, you know, a big conglomerate is like family run. And so you have, you know, these high up execs who've like essentially grown with the company because it's their family's company. And so historically, I guess why that was is because there was an incentive post World War II as South Korea was rebuilding its economy, and that if you tie your family to your workplace, like it's motivation for longevity. So there's incentive to have the chaebol, because if it's your family company, their mentality, their thought was, well, of course you're gonna like be there for a long time. You're gonna want to build this company up, and that'll help, you know, the economy. So like your Samsung, all those companies have built up. It's because they were thinking longevity, which is, you know, it's a different, especially with current Western workplace culture, where a lot of people go into companies, such a corporate workforce. You go into companies, you're there for a couple of years, you move on to another role. It's just a different perspective to that. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, that's cool. And you know, they even say first generation chaebol, second generation chaebol. Yeah, so you're right. That's so true. Well, I just learned something from you. I didn't even think about that. I just knew that was part of the culture and K-dramas, but that there's such a history behind it. That's interesting. So you actually looked into that.
Yes, and that's what the gets me to do is I'm like, wow, I'm very like, because I'm so invested in the characters, I'm so invested in the setting, like I want to know more. So I was like, okay, like this, and you know, chaebol comes up, I feel like in a lot of different K-dramas, like, wait, let's figure this out. Oh,
I feel like it's one of the big common tropes, right?
Yes.
That we see. That's super cool. Oh, go ahead. You were going to say something.
I was going to say, and then I learned a lot about history. That's so like, you know, as everyone is aware, the South Korean economy is huge. It exploded a lot within the last 20, 30 years. And part of that was due to like the chaebol culture. They, like I said, these families were invested in the long-term survival of these companies because that's their family legacy. So if your family legacy is Samsung, of course, you're going to want to build that up. And that's where Samsung is now. And
so you're right. So it sounds like you're attributing the success of these companies based on that cultural legacy or that family legacy philosophy.
Yes.
I can see that.
Like I think there's pros and cons to it. There's obviously, you know, as we saw in the Itaewon Flat, there was some cons to that type of culture too. But you know,
I mean, the Janga chairman's a little extreme, being pretty cold to his own son. Just saying. But yeah. Yeah, it was like you know, he was like choosing between my son or company. He's like, company. He's like, you know, wow. I was like, that's intense.
Yeah, but then that's a huge legacy you could leave behind, right? So you know, it's like, you know, and I think one of the things about villains, even in K-dramas, even the villains, you find ways to relate and you kind of understand their motivation more. Like, yes, it's easy to like just, if there's a very simple villain, it's easy to be like, oh, I hate them. But then especially with the Janga chairman, I sympathize with him in some ways. Like, okay, he's built this, like, okay, if I built this company for years and years and years, okay, I can see it's like my baby too. Even though like, so it's like you get mixed feelings, but it's like you get complex villains and you can like, you're along the journey with them as well. And I think that's what K-dramas do so brilliantly, is it humanizes them still.
I love that you said that too, because that's one of my favorite aspects too. Villains are not like one dimension in a K-drama where you hate them. You start out by hating them, right? I do. And then you're like, oh, then you hear their story. Yes. And you're like, oh, I see. That's what happened. That's why you're such a jerk. Got it. But then that helps you, you know what I mean? You like start, I mean, then usually by the end of the K-drama, I feel sorry for the villain or the second lead or somebody. And then you're like, you know what?
Yeah, whoever. Yes.
Right. And so you end up liking everybody, honestly.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I do. The Changa chairman probably was close to like somebody to not like, but no, you're right. There's always that. Even when I remember when he went on his knees, even toward the end, I found that hard actually to see, even though we all wanted that. We're like, he deserves, I mean, look at what he did to Pak Sarui. But then you still saw that. You're like, ooh, that's kind of a sad moment, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, but yes, it just hits. It's like it gives you mixed feelings, and I think it's okay to process those different, like why you feel differently versus
That's why I love talking to you, because honestly, Anthony, that's true. Mixed feelings are normal.
yeah, exactly.
People are like, I want to feel this way and this way. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. You can
Exactly.
feel like both of them, you know?
Yes, like I'm not either. I mean, that's like I said, I'm team number Sun at the end of the day, but I still like Hanji Pyeong a lot. It wasn't like, oh, I'm rooting against him because I'm rooting about. Like, I was like, oh, I like them both, and I definitely wanted Hanji Pyeong to have his happy ending as well. But and then it's I'm glad at the end it was still there was no bad blood essentially.
Mm-hmm. That's great that you share that, because you're right. It didn't have to be an either or. You had a preference, but it wasn't like, then forget Hanji Pyeong, right? Yes, totally. I had to repeat that because I thought that was really profound. So lastly, I mean, you're still on this journey. Okay, what Descendants of the Sun? So you went a little backwards. You saw some of the more recent dramas. What made you choose Descendants of the Sun, which is about, I don't know, 6 years old?
Yeah, my cousin and my sister were gonna watch that. I don't know why they picked that one. But then I can't remember the reasoning why. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll watch this one too. So we all watched that one together. And I'll say that was probably my least favorite of the ones I've seen. Not that I made it through it. I didn't like hate it by any means. That one, like I almost, like when I was counting earlier, like I almost missed that one because it was like, and then
Oh, so why was it your least favorite?
I just think it didn't. I mean, like I just think it didn't. It didn't draw me in, and I feel like it's some of the, like, I feel like it's a little too romance focused given the setting of it, which I know, like romance in it, of course it's fine, but I feel like it skewed too much for my taste.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I've heard that before, but that's interesting. I wanted to hear your explanation because people love Descendants of the Sun, but again, everybody has their own experience.
Yes.
So any last words of K-dramas? And I guess if you had to, I always ask, any last words, or do you have like an elevator pitch that you tell people, hey, you have to watch K-dramas? I don't know if you do that, but maybe people are like, hey, Anthony, why are you watching K-dramas? Is there something you particularly say or want to say to those folks?
Listen, I would say it even though it's obviously dramatizations, you can learn so much from them. And so with, like I said, with Itaewon Class, learn about the culture of the South Korean economy, which is very impactful to the world right now. And Mr. Sunshine, I know a very dramatization of historical events, but it kind of gives you some insight into that history there. And it kind of gives you some context as to, why things are the way they are. Like I said, I know it's a drama. It's not, obviously it's not, don't be like, this is what actually happened.
I know, right. And they always say that at the beginning, but Mr. Sunshine is one of my all-time faves too.
Yeah,
that was just well done.
And then it's one of those that also, like, I think it obviously portrays like war and that colonialism in a negative light, but you kind of see what happens, like like I said, even though I know it's not like I said, this is like what happened, it kind of gives you some insight into the motivation behind why some people are the way they are. And so so back to the elevator pitch. I think K-dramas really allow you to explore so many different social issues and controversial topics that it's hard to talk about just to talk about on its own. So like Crash Landing on You could probably talk about North Korea versus South Korea, and then probably motivate you to learn a lot more about that history and why they're the way they are right now. And so there's a lot of social commentary that you can take, and there's just so many characters you relate well to, and it's just such an emotionally gratifying experience through the entire spectrum of emotions.
I love that. I think you just sold me on K-dramas, but you didn't have to sell me because I already watched them. But no, I think that was really well said. Thank you, Anthony. I'm so glad you joined me, and let's keep talking K-dramas together.
Absolutely. I will let you know when I finally get to What's Wrong with Secretary Kim.
Oh yeah, we could talk about it, but there's so many others too. So You know, you can always turn to me anytime to talk about them. So.
See, this is why that keeps getting bumped down. You just told I said I was gonna watch it. You're like, no.
I know there's so many. I'm sorry. Okay, go watch it. Go watch that one finally. It is good. It is actually really good. But there's so many, I'm just saying, right? Yeah. So at least you have me whenever you want to talk about K-dramas. You can always call Noona's Noonchi.
Perfect. Yes, I will definitely do so. And I hope everyone, and listening to some of the episodes were great too. So
thank you guys.
Cool. Thank you.
You can listen in on platforms such as Spotify, Pandora, Google, and Apple, but also watch the podcast on our Noona's Noonchi YouTube channel every Monday where it launches at 6 p.m. Eastern.